Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners, hosted by agency veteran and coach Steve Guberman. Agency Bytes is a podcast focused on delivering actionable agency information from agency experts in about 25 minutes. Why 25 minutes? Because who has the attention span for much more these days? And you can squeeze in a listen between meetings with time for a bathroom break or coffee refill before your next meeting.
Welcome to Agency Bytes, a podcast for agency owners. I'm Steve Guberman from Agency Outsight, where I coach agency owners to build the agency of their dreams. Today, I'm super pumped to be here with Rachel Gertz. She is the co-founder and director of delivery and growth at Louder Than 10. She helps small, medium-sized digital agencies transform their digital project management operations through hands-on training and consulting. Her mission at Louder Than 10 is to propel tech workers through an uncertain future by training digital companies how to give power to the people leading their projects. What a brilliant mission statement. Rachel, thanks for joining me. How are you?
I'm doing great, Steve. It's good to see you, and thanks for having me on today.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I guess just initially, I've seen you in similar ecosystems and lots of friends and coworker people in our industry in common, and just have nothing but amazing things to say about you and Louder Than 10. So I'm thrilled to have you here.
Same. I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me. And it's been, I don't know how we haven't brushed shoulders sooner, just with all of the bureau stuff and all that. But
yeah,
it's great to chat. You're great.
Partly because you're 2,000 miles up in the mountains, far away.
Well, it could be. I mean, Vancouver's got valleys. I'm in the valley.
Okay. Yeah. So talk about Louder Than 10. What was your kind of journey to launching this and what's going on there?
Yeah. Man, it started 15 years ago, and it was actually born out of an RV trip. And the RV trip became this lifestyle around, before Instagram, people were doing van life. It was my partner and I, we decided that we were just going to, so it was a life and work partner, and we were going to just take it on the road and do some project management, freelancing, and design and dev work. And of course, you take the limits off of the office, the rules, and you start looking at how you want to set up a business that's going to feed you and take care of you. And I think that's really where the seed of Louder Than 10 was born. And from there, it really did migrate into and transform into something where it was a lot of the time we don't explicitly talk about power. And one of the things we realized was that project management creates these conduits for power to flow in a way that actually empowers people who are doing the work to do their jobs. And we have to talk about it, and we have to do it in a way that's actually equitable and fair. So
I don't think I've ever heard project management given so much energy and so much juice of the power. And I don't know, I'm just seeing some He-Man, She-Ra kind of characters through the so the journey to Louder Than 10 gave you guys the understanding of how much power is in project management to either make or break a team or make or break a project. Is that where it's coming from?
Yeah, a lot of it. I have a history or background in education and teaching. And I think what I started to understand was that so much of the work of project management, a lot of folks were kind of they would be good at either organization, or they'd be good at having conversations. They'd be good at some of these really practical coordinator skills, but then the strategy side, or the understanding the why of a business, or understanding how we're actually creating a model that's supposed to take care of the people. Many PMs would fall into the role, and they wouldn't actually have those conversations or be included in the strategic conversations. So they would be task jockeys, or task monkeys, and they wouldn't actually be able to steer or drive the projects that in the job description said you're to support driving and supporting the accountability of the project.
So, but is that more of a leadership challenge? I want you to do this, but now I'm not letting you do this?
I mean, at the end of the day, right, it does fall back into leadership, because a lot of folks, we're if you look at our audience, so primarily digital agencies, right? And a lot of the owners, they might have started out either as designers, engineers or developers. Maybe they were in a content or PM background, and I actually find the ones with a PM background are exceptional because they get it, right?
Okay.
But they may or may not know how project management, like they'll do it because they've learned it, they have to apply it, but they may not know how to pass the reins.
Mm-hmm.
And passing the reins is extremely difficult, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was kind of part of it, is just understanding what that handover process looks like, because most of the things fall apart after sales, right? Sales to the handoff for delivery.
So sales to the handoff of delivery, but also from the account management standpoint, from a production standpoint, like on so many levels at different scales, like micro agencies, behemoth agencies, and everything in between. That close of deal to what's next is just the bumpiest road. And so, we're talking specifically about like how the owner can aid in a smoother project management, but giving the PM team that power to do what they're supposed to do. That's like a trait that's indicative of just overworking a boss. Like the owner doesn't know how to delegate, can't seem to let go, control freak. And maybe they were a designer, a developer, or whatever. But like that's one of the biggest challenges that I see of agencies is, owner doesn't know how to let go and get out of the way. And even if they delegate, they're still bringing it back and micromanaging and checking in, and stop doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, right. Like, and I think it requires a level of safety. If they don't feel comfortable and safe to be able to do that, and they don't know how to have the conversations around what project leadership as a concept even looks like, of course they're not going to want to let go. I wouldn't want to let go either, right?
Yeah.
So I think, there is this whole piece around like, what does truly authentic project leadership look like? And it's like, imagine you have these folks that are driving projects, and they're not just like, catching this time scope budget stuff, but they're the ones that are like masterfully being able to identify risk from that second sales call. Like maybe after the first sales call, they're like, oh yeah, so do we have a whole bunch of new stakeholder faces? Is this like recent acquisition? Do we notice like the things they're asking for, they're not being super specific about, or they change from conversation 1 to conversation 2? If a PM, and like oftentimes we'll be in the space where we'll be working with PMs who are also AMs, because maybe the company's smaller, or maybe the type of projects they're working on don't require separation. But that PM or project lead can totally unearth this amazing ability to like create alignment with that client, especially after that sales process. It's beautiful when it functions correctly.
And when they're allowed to. And the thing I think it's magical about that is the salesperson or people, they're focused on the dollars. They're typically incentivized to close a deal.
Yep.
So they're not looking at red flags. They're looking at the red flags as a circus, not as danger warning signs. And then it lands on the PM. And so strategically, bring those people in sooner. And there's so much fear around, let me have somebody from the delivery side involved in the lead gen process, the qualifying and disqualifying process, the scoping and budgeting process. Like, so why are leaders getting that so wrong? How, like, what can they do to fix it?
Yeah, I mean, again, I do think that comes to like the scarcity model, or the scarcity mindset. So of course, if you don't have enough business and sales is incentivized to take, sales, then they're going to make riskier decisions, but the risk is going to get transferred. So I think the thing that we don't do enough of is we don't actually quantify what risk is to the business in terms of, you can sell that project, but it's actually going to cost you more than you sold it for because of the risk that you've taken on. But all that aside, I think one of the things, if you're like, okay, but how do we exchange that and turn that into something where it's like, we're not all of a sudden operating, it's 2024, who isn't operating out of a scarcity mindset right now, right? What if instead we could actually look at opportunities for these project leads to see the chance for alignment? I honestly think they can build incredible relationships as well as, when trained properly, as account managers. But because their eye is on the details, they're not going to oversell. They're not going to promise things that are impossible, which is where things break down in the relationship. So the catching of scope creep and the catching of, oh yeah, you mentioned this problem like 3 times, in the last call. I think there's something here that we could do next quarter, not this quarter right now with the budget, but if we focus and put our resources in the right place, I think all of those strategic conversations are things that PMs should actually understand how to do, and they should be able to do it very well. AM and PM don't have to be as, that tension that they talk about, it doesn't have to be as significant as people purport.
Interesting. I don't know that I've picked up too much tension, loggerheads between those two roles.
Good.
So that's interesting that you allude to that. But you're also talking a lot about that blended role of AM, PM.
Yeah.
I see a lot of smaller shops trying to blend that unsuccessfully. And
Yeah.
I'm
What do you
curious, like,
notice?
I see it. I see it unsuccessful because I feel like there are two different mindsets,
Yeah.
and the analytical and data driven, Gantt chart person versus the relationship. Let's go out, socialize, and have drinks. They're not always the same kind of
That's
embodiment. So, like, what are your, I guess, guidance on how do you find the right person, or what is this right person that can do both? Are they more PM? Are
yeah.
they more AM? Like, how do you find that right blend?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. I've been trying to kind of almost come up with a model for describing this. I'm not quite at the final, like, thread there, but
We
what
can
I see
workshop it
is that
right here. Let's go.
let's do it. Let's do it right now.
Yeah.
So when you see a project leader who has curiosity, compassion, and like care when they're building
Mm.
that into their own team relationships, right? Like, you kind of think about your clients are on one side, your team is another client, really. Like, you have to
Hmm.
take care of them, and you have to actually take care of them first if you want to take care of your clients. So when I see curiosity, compassion, and care, and then I see that they are capable, like accountability, people who are able to be accountable, that, again, even though this sounds like, oh, that's like a rote skill that you're going to be able to just do or not do, accountability is often a function of trust and safety. So
Mm.
again, if you come back to this compassion and care, if a PM feels that they're supported, and leadership has got their back for like difficult conversations that they go beyond them, and the team is empowered to actually have those kind of upfront risk reduction conversations, like, a PM can be extremely accountable and can play this more strategic AM or strategist role. I see a lot of like
Yeah.
digital producer, right? Comes up
Yeah.
a lot. And I have seen through like our program, I think we have like 300 plus shops that have gone through now. The folks that put their PMs and project leaders through, they are naturally inclined to step back and start asking why. If they're
Mm.
not asking why, if they don't care about that, and they're not interested, in like more of divergent thinking or non-linear thinking, they may actually miss the opportunity to create that strong relationship.
Wow. I love that. Their inability to be curious, take care of their team, things like that. Um, yeah. Super interesting.
Yeah.
Super rudimentary question, but
Okay.
I think it begs to be asked. Early on, first PM hire, first account manager hire. There's a shop. It's a handful of people. The owner is playing account manager, or the senior designer is playing account manager or project manager. What are some of the things they need to do to shift into? We need to put this person in place that's not billable for the most part, or how do we convert into billable and bring that
Yeah.
person on board?
Yeah, for sure. So I don't know where you're at with your like the size for your recommendations for when people bring on PM. What we notice is like when you hit that between 5 to 7, and definitely before you're 10 people,
Yep.
you definitely want to make that first hire, because you're just putting so much extra energy into the managing, right? So at that point, like, you probably can and should have at least a very simple SOP in place for like basic processes,
Hmm.
especially sales to project management handovers.
Yeah.
And that, I mean, you can have those done so effectively, even just by having an interview style documentation process where like the asker is being like,
Yep.
okay, tell me the next steps, right? So that is really key. I would absolutely get folks to be sitting down and looking at like, what are we noticing about our project patterns? So are we seeing typical breakdowns happening in
Mm.
any of these phases? If they are happening, can we just step back for a minute? Could we predict what would happen on the next project? Because that is going to tell us, right, what kinds of
Mm.
patterns we have as an agency. And this is going to give us the opportunity when we're looking for our next hire, what kind of intuition that person's going to be able to add, right? A lot of shops try to hire a junior their first hire.
Yep.
If you have a strong strategist or other leader, you're probably not even in a place where you have a direct, all these established directors yet. If you have a strong strategist or even like a design lead or tech lead, you can pair someone like that, but they are not that that individual's not going to be able to take on the brunt of the difficult conversations, the emotional output, right, of working with this type of team. So I would say, if you're going to look at like a junior or a mid-level, probably make that like the second hire and then get the support of that. See, because that first PM is going to be the person that realistically is probably going to be doing a lot of operational work as well,
Yeah.
right? Because they get like, oh yeah, I'm good at this, get pulled in and do that.
It'll be the
So those
first
are
person that focuses only on delivery, process,
right.
operation. Because again, it's the owner doing it
Exactly.
now, ad hoc, figuring it out, wearing 37 other hats. So
Yep.
if you bring in a junior and you're, what's the phrase, pound wise, penny foolish? No, penny wise,
Yeah.
pound foolish. There you go.
Yeah.
And you're like, I'll get a junior. They'll follow my Google Doc. They'll use
No problem.
our, Asana or whatever that person has no clue and they're going to jump into the insanity and not know how to untangle it and
Exactly.
fix it.
Yeah.
Mid-level, you got better chances, but you're saying start with that senior person, let them iron things out, build better processes, and then you can build the junior people below them to
Yeah.
aid in account management, project management.
And it's a beautiful growth path then, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because then you're embracing that continuous learning
Yeah.
pathway. And like they always say, the best person to create documentation or even to like follow up on continuous improvement is your next hire, because they're going to be like, hey, why do we do this though, right? Like
Yeah.
they have a lot of insight. And yeah, and like that, I kind of love that model of like looking at it's like a junior will follow process that's existing. Mid will be able to adapt. Senior lovers. Oh my goodness. Senior level PMs. They are lovers. They're wonderful people.
Senior lovers, absolutely. We love
Yeah,
them all.
we love all of them. They can go ahead and create new process, right? And
Yeah.
they're also wonderful at well, they can be taught to be wonderful at mentorship as well. So that's kind of a
Yeah.
part.
I also think they've got the experience and the self-confidence to push back to the owner and say, cool, you've done it this way. That's not going to work moving forward, especially as we
Yeah.
grow. And so you don't want to hire a yes person. You want to hire somebody that's going to come in and kind of be an agent of change
Yes.
for how things can get done. It'll increase profitability. It'll increase morale. Because like you said, take care of the team. A senior
Yeah,
person is
you're
going to
right.
do that.
Yeah, totally. Where a junior they just might absorb the shock. They are honestly
Yeah.
become shock absorbers. Then they learn all of these bad habits in the trenches. Then they go to their next agency and they're like, well, this is how it's always been done. And so the team, I think that's like when I hear, because there's a lot of rhetoric about project managers and like,
Mhm.
oh man, I hate working with project managers. And it's like my first experience and my last were awful. That's often because PMs had to learn in the trenches, adopt these practices that were like, well, yeah, we have to throw the team under the bus because we just need to take this project, instead of it being like, what might it look like if we could have great clients, a great team, and great projects? And why not all three, right?
Yeah. But does that, I mean, so that doesn't fall on the PM, that falls more top level. So how does the PM really play the role in helping with what that culture looks like?
Yeah, for sure. So one thing that like Louder Than Time really learned over the last 15 years, focusing on like the sort of, we went from going from individual courses, digital PM foundations, into more like custom team training. And the reason is because we were finding that these junior mid levels and sometimes even like non-specified like design leads or tech leads would take our courses, and then they would come out and they'd be like, wow, like I want to make all these changes and I want to do this
Mm.
and this and this. They'd go back to the owner or other leaders in the company and they would be like, well, like I don't think that you're the one that should be making that call. So the alignment was off, and it was like this breakdown between, like you
Yeah.
said, like a PM trying to implement change, and then the owner leader being like, well, I've always done it this way and I'm not about to change that.
Yeah.
So we had to start looking at it from more of like the team angle. It's still very effective when you have that support, and it can work well, but the team all being versed in what I'd call project literacy, whether that's financial literacy or, client communication literacy. The PM's role, I believe, ends up being one of what we call referential power, right? They have no direct, power or influence. They have everything is, sorry, they don't have direct power. They have influence. So everything is referential for them. If
Okay.
they do a great job at being a good human and taking care of the team and the project, then that's where the team is like, yeah, I want to make this happen. I want to work for this with you. So they can be great cheerleaders. They are also, I think, incredible at keeping an eye on bigger picture revenue and
Hmm.
health, right? Health of that revenue. I can't tell you how many PMs I know that are like, what's the delivery margin though? They don't know, right? They
Mm.
don't know how much money is getting spent on the project. They're like, well, we have a budget and we stayed under on the budget. But yeah, but the project took 3 months longer. So where, you're still having expenses come out every month. Where's that money going? That financial literacy is key. And that PM can be the key holder for that.
So, what are some of those numbers they need to keep their eyes on, other than just are we under budget? Are we on time?
Yeah. I mean, this is like we have stronger opinions on this, and I know maybe other folks would disagree, but I think that project managers need to be able to know what like revenue per client is and the target revenue. I think revenue per full-time employee is valuable as well. And again, a more
Hmm.
transparent salary framework enables that kind of discussion. I think again with utilization, a lot of people come back and go, you need to be time tracking, you need to be monitoring every minute so that
Yep.
you know where that money is going. My thing is this, you get what you measure, right? So yes, to understand what you're doing, when you're doing it, how you're doing it for project builds. If you're using that to track utilization to make sure that like people are being effective and you're going to like make layoffs and cuts based on those numbers, in my opinion, I think that the focus should be more on revenue targets per month and then
Hmm.
the accountability framework and the financial literacy to enable those teams to be able to say, here's what we can do together. And then don't focus so much on those tiny, tiny bits of pieces of time that were initially came out of the scientific method and approach, which was like carrot and stick management. Like, we're
Mm.
going to beat you or fire you if you don't get this right. And to me, it's like, is that the future we want? So
Yeah.
that's my whole.
Interesting. I love that. I don't see enough of that transparency, especially on the level of PM. I see it, obviously, senior leadership,
Yeah.
some level of transparency. But the mindset on the junior level is like, oh, we're making all this money. Why am I only making X? And
Right.
so more transparency would lead the entire scope of the team to not ask, why am I only making X, when they get to see where the
Yeah.
money goes, where does it come from, why do we need to, move things along, hit milestones, things like that. And you're pointing
Totally.
all that to the PM.
Like when I'm teaching, I'll do this thing where I'll be like, this is your company bank account, right? So the idea is you're going to fill it with revenue, but at the bottom, we have this little hole, and every single month, the money's dripping out at a steady pace. It blows their minds often when they're looking at how much of the money that goes in goes right back out again.
Hmm.
And it's usually labor. They don't understand how much. They're like, well, why can't I just brought in this new project? Like, why can't I have like a 10% raise? They don't
Yep.
understand the relationship. So when we teach that, and we're like, yeah, we do want you to ask for a raise, and we want you to be able to do that in a very respectful and meaningful way where the revenue of the company is actually positively impacted as well. So it's good for you, good for the company, good for the clients, right? So all of
Yeah.
that gets taught.
Yeah. In the scenario we were talking about before, where AM and PM are blended as a sole person,
Yeah.
throw that away. This is just a
Yep.
PM. They're in charge of
Yep.
delivery. They're not doing true account management. How do you tie that person to rev gen and account growth?
Yeah. So again, that's probably going to be looking more at like opportunities to capture scope creep, reduction, or like increase in efficiencies, shortening project timelines, reducing the number of resources that need to be on the project, those types of things.
Okay.
Um,
Yep.
I still, even if there's like a separate AM, the more that that PM can think like an AM and look at their
Hmm.
project that way, they are like, here's an opportunity, here's an opportunity. Go to the AM. Hey, here's the 3 things I think we could do. What do you think? Then the AM can communicate all of that and be external facing, but the PM is still thinking about it in terms of like
Yeah.
opportunity. Why not have that, right?
Yeah. And again, and to your point earlier, it gets everybody on the same page, rowing in the same direction of we want
Yes.
better clients,
Thank you.
larger budgets. So
Yeah.
why not think proactively? Even if my lane is here, why
Yeah.
can't I think about your lane also?
Exactly. It's like knowing where you start and stop, but being supportive where you're not just like, oh, I don't do that.
Yeah.
Sorry. It's like, how do we do the handover? How do we do the baton toss? Right.
Yeah.
So, absolutely. I think it's pivotal for us, especially as a small shop,
Hmm.
when you're like your target, if you're measuring utilization, your rates are like a lot lower, right? You have
Yeah.
to be pulling in the same direction and seeing any opportunity where there could be leaks for revenue, just like, what can we do differently next time? where we could turn this into like a workshopping opportunity, a strategy set of sessions for the client. This is just one more project for them. They're already overloaded. They're not putting energy into this as much as we are. But if we were able to actually unblock them and create revenue opportunities for them, they're going to be paying a lot more attention, right?
Yeah. I love that. So wait, you were kind of blended earlier. Are you team time tracker or not?
I say team time track if you don't have the data, and if you need the data and you're going to actually do something with the data, use the time tracking, because you will understand. Sometimes you're just like, I literally don't know how much time this takes. It's brand new. Anything where it's like greenfield, you haven't done it before, valuable, right? But don't tie like compensation and all of that stuff to this, because it just turns everything into just measuring and chasing the wrong things. And then it is really like, I find it can be really demotivating. You're never going to get accurate data when people are putting the time in at 4:00 on Friday. They don't know.
Never.
PMs switch tasks every 5 minutes, right? So
yeah.
I
just had to get you on the record. I wasn't sure if you were, but for good reason, time track. Yeah.
We have a whole thing on the dark history of project management, and there was a whole workshop on decoupling like time and resourcing, and like what could that look like if we didn't do it that way. And it's so important to me, because I just look at the direction we're going with, like people having like wristbands in factories monitoring their every move to get that efficiency level. What kind of future is that?
No, I don't want to be a part of any of that at all.
Me neither.
Yeah.
Let's go on a mountain somewhere. We'll just
let's go.
Let's get out of here.
Well, all right. I want to switch gears real quick and throw a couple of random rapid fire questions at you. Answers to which can be personal, professional, digital, or physical, whatever. So first is, what are you binging in your life these days? What can't you get enough of?
Don't judge me for this, but I started watching Grey's Anatomy again.
Okay.
Do you know how well that show actually holds up? Thematically, they have something that's like big life lesson, reinforced by trauma in the ER, relationships, and the depth of the character. I can't believe I'm talking so passionately about Grey's Anatomy, but
more so than project management.
Yeah, shocking.
That's amazing. Yeah. No, I know it's a huge hit. I can't believe it's still going all these years later.
I dare you to watch one episode and stop. Just try.
I'll give it a shot. Yeah. What is a tool that you've recently integrated into your life that you look back and think, how did I survive without this before?
Oh, recently.
It can't be AI.
It can't be AI. I love that. Okay, let me think recently what I started using for tools. Okay, I started using a journal tracker, so like a daily journal thing, and it's called Daylio, Daylio. And in it, you can actually monitor your habits. And I started to monitor like things like self-sabotage as an activity. And that was very interesting, because I started to learn a lot more about myself just by reflecting a little bit at the end of the day. So I would say that's
wow.
I've been going on that steady now. So it's not new, but newish.
So the journal entry is somehow monitored, and the tool is able to see, Rachel, great job with self-care. Rachel, maybe don't do that because you're self-sabotage. Like,
yeah,
wow.
You can get like your results and they'll say like your mood was higher on the days when you did these things and lower the day after or the day before. It's wild. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
I'll check it out. Daylio. Yeah. Very cool. And then finally, what's an invaluable piece of business advice that you can offer from your experience, from your perspective?
Man, that hits. I think there's something to say about learning what it is to trust yourself and understanding that, you know, you're gonna do things in your business that are gonna be difficult. And in those learnings and that trust that you have to cultivate, like sometimes there's not going to be an external guide that's going to tell you, hey, you're on the right track. Hey, don't give up. Sometimes what you need is to sit in a very cold, dark room and sit with yourself and be like, this is what I need for myself. This is what I need in order to understand who I am and what I'm about. And I think that many folks could probably resonate with that right now.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you. That's definitely rings true for me and has many times over in my career. So thank you. Rachel, thank you for your time, your wisdom, your experience, and your vulnerability and everything you had to share today.
Thanks, Steve. You're wonderful. I really appreciate it.
I appreciate you.
Thanks again for tuning in to Agency Bytes. If you know someone with expert knowledge on a topic that agency owners would love to hear about, go to agencyoutsight.com/podcast-guest and nominate them.